Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halib.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Lindz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast. At the age of 89, in 2018, the acclaimed James Ivory became the oldest Oscar winner for his adapted screenplay of Call Me By Your Name. So we just saw a preview for The Last Showgirl. So this is Pamela Anderson's
her comeback tour.
Yeah, comeback tour.
Reinvention.
Her reinvention, her revival. She's here. She's an actress. Yes.
She was always an actress.
But she's an actress again in a mainstream film that's critically doing okay and considered for awards, you know. So and it's a brave role. I think that's what's interesting about it.
Yeah.
You know,
it is 1,000 miles away from Baywatch. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's I think it's a film where she's embracing her age, or the role is allowing her to.
Yeah.
And it's 2000. I think it's 2024 in America, but it came out here in 2025. Directed by Gia Coppola, yes, of the Coppola family, and written by Kate Gersten, and it was based on a play, actually, that Gersten had done. After she visited a similar show, showgirl show, to what was depicted in the film, and she saw this show also closed and was inspired to write this film. It stars Pamela Anderson, Jamie Lee Curtis, Billy Lord, Dave Bautista, Brenda Song, Kiernan Shipka, and it focuses on the last days of this sort of long-standing showgirl review. I don't know how to say that word. That is coming to a close.
I'm not actually sure which word you're saying.
I'll define it while you're. Review is like a type of multi-act popular theatrical entertainment that combines music, dance, and sketches. That was the word that I found on Wikipedia to describe this show.
Maybe it's just your accent.
It's my accent.
So I find this a really interesting and faceted performance from Anderson. The way it was shot felt quite reverential. These muted tones, the contrast of like the bright and colourful and quite stark razzle-dazzle against the daily, regular life of Shelley, who's been with the company for decades and who has made it her entire life, her entire personality. The first sort of 10 minutes is her in the dressing room going on and on about how it was started in like Paris, France, and it's just, she's obsessed with this idea of what it used to be rather than what it necessarily is now. And she has become immersed in the razzle-dazzle and in the company so much that she hardly knows how old her own daughter is. Or what the kid, who is about to graduate from college, she doesn't even know what the kid's majoring in. And that was quite startling to see that, like, she has had a focus that is incredibly, like, singular-minded for decades, to the exclusion of kind of her child, like potential long-term romantic partners, the friends that she has. There's not a single friend that she has that isn't also or wasn't part of the show. She's completely isolated within a busy environment, which is a really strange thing to say, but it's exactly how that feels.
Yeah, so it's one of those. I think that Las Vegas is a really interesting setting for a story because it's such a unique place. I've never been, but you have this. It's just so American. It's so concrete, flashing lights, desert. You know, ennui, nostalgia. It's just giving all of that. And you said it reminded you of Florida Project?
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah. I did, yeah. And so the color palette and just the way it was shot, it really gave me Florida Project. I think that was, well done for remembering that. That was what I said when we came out. And also, I have a really interesting fact here that I found earlier and refused to tell you, that I will reveal now. It's a mystery. The score of the film was courtesy of Mike Snow frontman Andrew Wyatt, who has also collaborated with Mark Ronson. So Mike Snow, the band who have the song Genghis Khan, which is one of my favourite songs, which I've probably played for you a million times. And it also has a wonderful video as well about a sort of James Bond character and a supervillain falling in love with a little dance routine choreographed. It's wonderful.
Yes.
So that was surprising to me because it's not something I put together while we were watching it, but it certainly has this kind of twinkly, dreamlike quality to it that it feels really quite surreal at times. There's also a wonderful part where Shelley does a solo dance on her own to Total Eclipse of the Heart, which I also really liked. I think that there is another film. I'm gonna I can't remember the title of it. I want to say it was something like Five Children. I saw it with one of our friends. It's a French film, and that film had a karaoke scene between two people who had once been together and had come together again in a convoluted and slightly complicated way after a couple of decades apart, and they sing Total Eclipse of the Heart together in karaoke, despite the increasing disapproval of people around them. And there was something about that I was thinking about while she was doing this. It was a completely different scene, but there's something really revealing about the use of Total Eclipse of the Heart in a film. It's always dramatic. It's always kind of starkly lit in some way. It's always about revealing something about the person. It is the equivalent of a striptease of the soul. You know, that's how I feel. Maybe that's just how I feel about that song, but there's something...
No, you're saying it's like it's a go-to audio cue.
We never
collective understanding.
It is very much a sort of audio shorthand for this character is unlayering themselves. They are dismantling some of their armor in some way in order to get at something underneath, whether that's for themselves or for the audience. And I've seen that happen more than once, and now I'm wondering if there have been perhaps even third and fourth times that I don't know about, because it's really interesting how that seems to be a go-to.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just overall the film is interesting in that you have someone who is quite a dreamer, the Pamela Anderson character, and has romanticized this what her daughter at one point angrily calls like a dumb nudie show, but for her it's like she's part of something magical and bygone. But the film itself, I didn't feel like it was romanticized or gritty. It just felt sort of like, you know, like we're floating along through their days, and we're just like following her, and we're out in Las Vegas looking at the buildings and the skyscrapers or whatever, and just kind of existing with her and allowing her to have aged, right? Yeah. Like she's in this environment where youth is just very much like a substance. Like,
and I think there's something really important here is that that time is used properly. You are allowed to linger with her. You're allowed to age with her in a way. You're not rushed as it might have been in the hands of someone else. And I thought that was really interesting, of giving us the space to look at her and really see her, both as herself and as the character.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Never Too Much, the Luther Vandross documentary, written and directed by Dawn Porter, who has made a number of documentaries. Her first one was Gideon's Army in 2013, and she's currently making a film about the relationship between Nelson Mandela and his first wife Winnie, called Portrait of a Marriage. Never Too Much premiered at Sundance in 2024 and documents the life of the late, truly great singer, Luther Vandross. Now, I grew up with a father who was absolutely obsessed with music, and still is, and through him I received a proper education in black music across the soul and Motown spectrum. And I don't think too many white Scottish kids who grew up in towns of about 10,000 people in the late 80s, early 90s got that kind of education. And I'm all the better for it. And I believe that my dad's favourite male singer of all time is Luther Vandross. So I came into this with a great appreciation for Vandross's work. I sing his songs in the shower. He's just classic. But this documentary had so much information about Luther's early years that I had no idea about. So I knew he had done some background work for David Bowie, and even before that, singing on albums for bands like Chic. But I had no idea about the band he first started singing in, who were called Listen My Brother, or the fact that they were on early Sesame Street. That was a huge surprise to me.
And I went into this documentary not knowing anything about Luther Vandross.
Just an absolute crime, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, probably being familiar with his, like, most famous songs just through the cultural ether. And being aware of him as a figure, but like I just didn't grow up with that because I didn't grow up with American music in the house, so anything like that would have been out of my sphere. And it was lovely, like, to get to, I almost felt like we got to know him as a person.
Yeah.
So what the film reminded me of was another CNN produced sort of documentary, a music biopic in a way, was Rock and Roll President, about the late great Jimmy Carter. So I, just as a side note, I highly recommend that, and I do believe it's on HBO streaming now, because it's they have the same style, where it's a lot of interviews with people close to the person, and it's like they're just sitting down and they're just talking about their friend. So that was much of this film, is that we're sitting down with his colleagues and friends and collaborators, and they're just talking about him the whole documentary. And then we're also hearing from him in interviews. And it really, in a way, kind of like broke my heart, the film, because seeing how beautiful of a person he was, it just really shone through his ambition, his vision, his artistic vision, which you can comment on. Like, we really got to see into his creative process, which we enjoy as creatives.
Yeah.
Like seeing someone who's just so talented and has a clear vision for how he wants his music and his concerts to go. He really just seemed like a good person. But he's also lonely.
Yeah.
And he died really young. And it was just, honestly, it was so messed up. Like, I didn't realize how young he died, and it's just, life's unfair.
So I want to come back to that part in a minute, but like I want to remark on what you said, because the cameos in this were of course really interesting. You have his band members and like people he worked with on the stage, but you also have cameos from celebrities like Jamie Foxx, Mariah Carey, Dionne Warwick. You actually get to see Luther's performance of A House Is Not a Home, which was originally sung by Dionne Warwick, and you get to see her reaction to his performance, and she is tearful. And I think both times, because I saw this first in the cinema and then we watched it together at home, and I cried both times as well. It is a virtuoso performance, and Vandross is in full command of the room's attention. He's using all his vocal ability to maximum potential. Man, he made Dionne Warwick cry. Like, what can you say? And she actually says that that was him showing her, like, the proper definitive version of that song, of her own song. And he was, he was incredibly ambitious. He was incredibly lonely. Obviously, the documentary is called Never Too Much, which was his first major solo kind of hit. But I also want to recommend, if anyone kind of wants to get to know Luther the man, because he's asked on Oprah once what is his favourite song, or his top few favourite songs. And he immediately says, Any Love, which is one of the most autobiographical songs, or maybe the only autobiographical song that he ever wrote. And I could quote the lyrics here, but I'm not sure I'm legally allowed to do that. But he's saying that he has so much, and yet he's still looking for that one thing. He has fame and fortune and the appreciation of fans, like literally millions of fans. When he wrote the song Dance With My Father with Richard Marx, that kind of marked his crossover from kind of mainly just the black radio channels into white music as well. And that was always like looked upon as like, you want to have crossover potential. He wasn't content with just winning certain records or like certain awards. it reminded me, it's funny you mentioned that other documentary, because we went to see the Pharrell documentary as well, and it was the same kind of thing, because I didn't know that Luther also did jingles, and so did Pharrell. Pharrell famously wrote the McDonald's "I'm Loving It" jingle, which I didn't know either, and I thought, wow, these really famous guys who have grown up being like rappers and singers, and you don't think of them as kind of like tootling away in their house writing a jingle for beer or a burger or something, but like you do what you do to pay the bills. Creativity is always coming out of you. It's really interesting and really inspiring. But yeah, he was a hugely lonely guy. There's mentions here of his queerness, and I don't necessarily want to get too much into that, because he seemed intensely private. He refused to answer questions, yes or no, about it, because he said it was nobody's business. But I wonder if he had lived another couple of decades, whether he might have changed his mind and felt more accepted, or felt that it was maybe more okay to do that. And it's a shame that he didn't get a chance. However, incredible back catalogue, an artist that I think we can all appreciate regardless of our particular taste in music.
Yes.